Hello everyone, I am Param. I scored 98 in SST 2 years ago, and in this video I am going to be telling you how to score 100 in SST in just January and February itself. So, first of all, I have covered this for maths and science as well. If you have not watched that, go to my previous videos. This is day 6 of our series to score 500 out of 500 marks. Let's start with the video. First of all, SST is not as application oriented as maths and science are. So therefore you need to solve less questions in SST as well. Memorize more and solve less. Simple as that. So you don't need to do PYQs or exemplar in this. Exemplar doesn't even exist in fact. But you do not need to do PYQs in SST. What you do need to do is read the NCERT from line to line. And this is the step most people miss. Because they think reading the NCERT for SST is a waste of time and it is not a good investment of our time, right? False. This is the best investment of your time. Genuinely, the best investment of your time is reading the NCERT. If you go to a random one shot and then learn 3 questions in 3 hours, that is not a good investment, because by reading the NCERT, you can finally memorize, not even memorize, just visualize the chapter in front of you. Some answers can just be written by blabbering about the chapter in SST, and therefore you need to read the NCERT from line to line. Plus, it is a theory-based subject, so therefore every single question will be asked from the NCERT itself. 100% of the paper will be from NCERT. Not even an indirect question can be framed. Reading the NCERT also includes reading the boxes, the keywords, and memorizing every single thing. Mark everything important in the book and memorize it then and there. If you do not want to memorize it then and there, then you can make some notes or read it for one time and then start memorizing after you have first read the chapter completely. Now, how do I know what thing is important in the chapter and what isn't? Well, we covered this in science. Either you can buy a reference book or you can use my notes. Keep them open beside your notebook or your book. And if you are doing a reference book, then what you can do is use the chapter at a glance. Chapter at a glance contains every single important topic of the book, and therefore you can use those topics to frame questions inside the book and know what you need to memorize. Other than that, if you're using my notes, then what you can do is some things which might not be covered in the NCERT are covered in my notes. If you have missed something in my notes, it will be covered in the NCERT. So both ways, if you want, you can create your own notes or you can write in the book itself, mark in the book itself. Both are fine because SST has a lot of content. So if you even want to create notes, don't go from word to word, but for sure include every single keyword in it. What I mean by keywords is, let's say you have to write an answer for nationalism in India, then Chauri Chaura, Gorakhpur, and this stuff will be keywords. So you need to note this, but not the in, the, etc. filler words. Now that we have covered the base strategy that every teacher tells you, let's start off with the main stuff which you are here for. History, geography, political science, and economics. So let's start with history. First of all, history is a very theory-based subject. Therefore, you do not need to practice a lot of new questions on it. But what you do need to do is PBQs or picture-based questions. Every single picture has a significance in the book, and therefore you need to remember that significance as well. Because questions come directly from those PBQs, whether it's 3 markers, 5 markers, 4 markers, 1 marker, everything. Everything comes from PBQs as well. So you need to remember who wrote or who made this picture. Now to practice the PBQs, you don't really need to, but in case to be sure in them, you can check out CFPQ. We have covered this in maths and science. CFPQ is a book. It is competency focused practice questions. This is a book released by NCERT so that you can practice competency based questions. Now in SST, there's not much competency that they can ask because there's not much application. But what there is PBQs and some curveball questions. So you can practice them from the CFPQ. What I mean by curveball questions is some questions are there which have a choice in them, like do this one or this one, and both of them are questions which you do not really know. These questions are curveballs because this is something very specific from a chapter, or sometimes not inside the chapter specifically, but you can infer them from reading the chapter. So you can cover these in CFPQ. Do not need to do PYQs, example or anything. Do CFPQs, memorize the NCERT, and do what I'm about to tell you next. Now, everyone in my time used to tell me that always remember history as a story, but I never understood how am I supposed to make this into a story which spans over 400 years. Print culture spans over 4,000 years. How am I supposed to make this as a story? So I'm going to be telling you the blueprint I used to make it as a story and remember. To create a timeline for yourself of what happened at what time, you need to remember the cause, event, and effect. So, first of all, divide the chapter into the timeline and then cause, event, effect. इवेंट का कॉज क्या था, इवेंट का इफेक्ट क्या था, ये याद होना चाहिए. एंड दिस कवर्स मोस्ट ऑफ योर हिस्ट्री आंसर्स इटसेल्फ. नेक्स्ट कम्स ज्योग्राफी. सो ज्योग्राफी इज द सेम एज हिस्ट्री इन द थ्योरी बेस्ड डिपार्टमेंट पार्ट, बट इट इज नॉट मच relevant to the PBQs or timeline. What you do need to do in geography is remember the maps. How do I remember the maps? Well, make the map, mark whatever you need to know inside the map, and then stick it onto your wall. So if you look at it every day, you will slowly memorize it and sometimes start practicing it as well. And simple as that for geography. So history and geography are done. These are one compartment. The second compartment of SST is political science and economics. Let's start with economics. Economics, these might contain some indirect questions which might require some brain. So for economics, you must need to do the graphs properly and you must need to analyze them and know what their analysis is, what their suggestive stuff is. Because sometimes in the exam they might give you a graph and then ask you to analyze it and answer questions based on it. So you need to know it from the book itself. To practice these type of questions, you can go to CFPQ. However, CFPQ only has like 10, 11, 15 questions for economics. I'm talking about last year's version. So I do not know if this specific thing is contained in the CFPQ, but again, 10, 15 questions, why not just do it, right? So remember the graphs very well and graph indicators, development indicators, stuff like this which is not very much theory based but can be used in application based. Remember these as well and you will score full marks in economics easily. Now lastly comes political science. So political science again might have some application but mostly is theory. So political science, you need to do every single box because keywords and specific boxes are very important in this. Plus you need to know the thinking behind the reforms you're reading. So in political science, if you read about some reforms by the government, you need to know the thinking behind it so that you can answer some application based question if it comes. If it doesn't come, then of course remember the theory. That's what SST is about, right? So now we have covered about 97, 98 marks. But first of all, I have scored 98 and the mistake I did is hate one single chapter. I hated print culture so much that I did not do that chapter until 2 days before the exam. I genuinely had time, but I hated print culture so much that I wasted 4 days in my holy holidays and I would rather finish print culture in the last 2 days, not even finish it. I left it half and I still scored 98. If I did it full, I would have scored 100 because I knew those 2 marks were gone in MCQs of print culture itself. So do not make the mistake of hating one single chapter. And if you do hate a chapter, please try to finish it as soon as possible so that you can get it done with and you do not need to save it for last 2 days before the exam. I did this mistake in 12th as well, so I'm trying to fix it right now. And secondly, weightage clustering. So some 5, 6, 7 marks of your questions might be reserved for some good questions, like actual questions which make toppers. What are these questions? These questions are clusters of SST. Like they link geography and economics or history and something like that. For an example, I'll give you agriculture. Agriculture can be asked in geography as well, and because it's a specific chapter, and it can be asked in economics as well from primary sector. Similarly, globalization. Globalization occurs in political science as well, the whole thinking behind it, and the globalization effect includes in economics. So stuff like this, which can be asked in either political science or economics, you need to do them very well so that even if a question of political science comes, you might be able to relate it to economics. That will suggest the examiner that you know a lot about this topic and a lot about SST, and so they will give you leniency in your marks. Similarly, if there's a question which comes as a cluster of these both, you can write it very well, which most people will not be able to. And that wraps up our 100 out of 100 strategy for SST. Subscribe this channel. In tomorrow's video, I'm going to be telling you about English strategy and then Hindi strategy. First, I was doing presentation tips, but I thought because I have less time right now, I do not really want to, back down from my commitment. So I will be completing your 100 out of 100 strategies for all 5 subjects. However, presentation might come a little late, so subscribe for that. I have covered presentation for maths. It is left for the other 4 subjects. So thank you for watching and subscribe if you found this helpful.